Alrighty, we've been live for 10 seconds and have not immediately dropped all the frames in the world, so we're going to get started here. Hello, and thank you for joining us again for the next session of Talkin'ronpa, a podcast with slides about the Danganronpa 3 animation. I am, as always, your host, Bograt.
I am the Krampus.
I'm Shiv.
I'm Hunter Green.
And I'm Vincent.
And so today we're going to be going over Future Arcs and Despair Arc episodes 7 and 8. Last week, honestly, not a whole lot happened despite us going over 4 full episodes. Kind of a lot of stuff got set up to start, but nothing really started too much on the Despair Arc side. And then, Future Arc, a couple people died, and then it was mostly just a lot of people talking about shit. But yeah, we will go ahead and get started. So first we're going to be talking about Future Arc Episode 7. So this episode starts with Monica giving a huge grand speech to a bunch of assembled Monokuma robots. She talks about Junko being dead and how it's all Naegi's fault, and wails about Despair being on the verge of being wiped out of hope. She declares herself the second Junko Enoshima, and says she will show the world real despair. There's a lot of, imagery in this. She's kind of dressed up Nazi-ish. There's, Monokumas in bars watching on the TV this speech and stuff like that. It's decently amusing, all told. Also, this actually gives us a real good look at Monica's eyes, which was something that got brought up last session. You can kind of see, I think, all told, what it's actually supposed to be is 2 squares.
Yeah, now that you mention it.
Yeah.
I don't think it's even supposed to be a manji kind of thing. I think it's 2 squares, but the outer edge of those squares gets cut off by the inner iris thing they do.
Yeah.
It should be noted that the scene is set up very much like a scene from original Mobile Suit Gundam.
There's one part of it that is, but the speech itself doesn't really. The speech itself does not actually relate that much to Garma, the funeral speech for Garma.
I think it actually does, because you have the framed drawing of Junko as opposed to the picture of Garma behind her as she does her speech at the podium.
I mean,
that's
very
close to gear.
That's a thing that happens a lot at funerals for heads of state and important people.
I'm just saying
what
that
I'm saying
plus
is the content of the speech doesn't really line up at all with
no.
Giren's speech, which is why I didn't really think it was that close of a reference. If they had something more about the hearts of despair bleed for its people, or things like that, I would feel it was a little bit more. I'm not necessarily saying they're not referencing it. It's certainly enough of a pop culture phenomenon that it would be something they would reference, but it also, for the most part, just feels like kind of a general, big, grandiose speech about somebody's funeral.
Now, it actually wasn't specifically that set off my thought on that, but the scene at the bar with the Monokuma bartender.
Yeah.
Because that made me think very much of Char's comments during Garma's. Either way.
Yeah, fair enough. So after that speech, we end up into the intro. And after the intro, we come back to Nagisa, one of the other Warriors of Hope from Ultra Despair Girls, speaking on the phone to Kamaru about Monica's whereabouts, and that her building is being guarded by an army of Monokuma robots. I think we did mention this very briefly back when we were playing through Ultra Despair Girls, but yeah, none of the Warriors of Hope actually die in that game. They all seem to have died, but yeah, none of them actually die.
They get surrounded by a bunch of Monokuma kids, and then we don't see them again, so we assume they die, but it looks like they're all fine.
Yep.
Yeah. And in fact, all of them, with the exception of Monica, have sort of abandoned the whole despair thing. They're not really all that about that anymore. They actually had, which again was something that did kind of happen in Ultra Despair Girls at the end of the boss fight, is they seemed to come to the realization oh shit, I done fucked up. And then they got essentially taken over by the Monokuma kids. So yeah, they
That being the other little thing, they weren't really so much. They weren't so much about despair. They just hated grown-ups.
Yeah, but I mean, they were working with Monokumas. They were.
Yeah, but it wasn't really a thing to them. They weren't trying to bring despair to the world per se.
Well, regardless, they abandoned their whole like, let's just murder fucking everybody stance, at the very least.
Yeah.
And now they're actually working with Komaru and Toko. They're still in Towa City, as far as I'm aware, just like Komaru and Toko are, and are kind of working to make things relatively safe there as best you can in a city that's pretty much entirely overrun with Monokumas. Speaking of which, Komaru and Toko at this time are making their way through Towa City, fighting through an army of Monokumas with the megaphone hacking gun, which Komaru still has, and obviously Toko still has her split personality with Genocide Jack. Since the end of Ultra Despair Girls, with Komaru and Toko deciding to stay in Towa City, it doesn't look like things have improved all that much. We get a little bit of a recap for those who didn't play Ultra Despair Girl, because, I mean, fair. It was kind of a bizarre side game.
Yeah.
There's a bunch of cameos from a bunch of the different enemy types that show up in that game, as well as a bunch of the special bullets that you get for the megaphone hacking gun. I felt like it was actually kind of a little nice reminder and like flashback to a game that I don't think gets enough credit in the series. I personally think Ultra Despair Girls was actually a really interesting game and like a really, really unique flip on the playstyle to make more of like an action-based game out of a series that's mostly visual novels.
Yes, but that very thing could also, because it is a side game and it has a different style of gameplay, that could mean that people who were more traditionally into the visual novels might not necessarily play it because it's just not up their alley.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, that's why it didn't do as well as the other Danganronpa games. But I just think it's an interesting take, and it's a competently done like action game is the big thing. Like it's not junky, it's not terrible, despite being done by sort of the same team. And I mean, admittedly, that does make sense because this is all done by Spike Chunsoft, which is a company that makes a wide variety of games. If I recall correctly, I think they're the ones behind the Onechan-bara series, so they definitely have their chops for making like action-style games. So as they're facing down another huge group of Monokumas, we end up slipping into Toko Vision, and apparently she's a huge fan of Revolutionary Girl Utena, as everyone should be. Also in this daydream, Toko and Byakuya apparently have 18 children, which all look like what Byakuya would look like if he got hit by the weird, like, child-forming curse candy thing from Detective Conan.
Right. I'm gonna eat dinner. I'll be right back.
Alrighty. Yep. And of course, they're in there with Toko's friend and servant, the perfectly average girl Komaru. If I recall correctly, this particular style of animation for Komaru here, this chibi style, is also referential to Sanae-san, which is a very long-running, almost Simpsons-like series in Japan. The characters tend to be animated like this. It's just very funny to have the immense disparity of art style between Komaru's character and everyone else, which is in the full-on, like, Utena shoujo style.
Not just long-running, longest-running animation in existence.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Sanae-san is very interesting and has been running since, like, continuously since, I think, like, the 60s or something.
The 60s,
It's ridiculous.
So, real quick back on that Spike Chunsoft, they're responsible for some titles I would never have thought would have been they'd been responsible.
Such as?
They developed Dragon Quest 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5.
Sort
They're
of.
not
like
the
that.
Publisher. They are listed as developers for it.
Yeah, they were the people that eventually went on to be Spike Chunsoft, and at the time I think were just a team within Enix. But yeah, no, they were the Dragon Quest guys.
As Chunsoft specifically.
Yeah.
Also the Mystery Dungeon series, Zero Escape, Virtue's Last Reward.
Yeah, like I said, they have a wide variety of things under their name. Right, so elsewhere Byakuya has a feeling that a pervert is imagining things both upsetting and far beyond her station,
Station.
which is
Great way to put it.
possibly the funniest line in this entire series so far. I honestly love Byakuya in basically every piece of Danganronpa media except the first game, where he's a piece of shit. Everything else he shows up in, Danganronpa related, he is a fucking goldmine. He's currently in his helicopter on the way to Future Foundation headquarters, receiving reports about going on. No branches of the Future Foundation are reporting any current remnant of despair activity in their areas, and it's reconfirmed that there is no indication of any of the events at headquarters being broadcast either. He's sort of attempting to puzzle out what the real motivation behind the killing game could be, since it certainly doesn't seem to be, actually being used to, like, rally the remnants of despair or whatever would be happening, or, like, bring despair to the people or whatever any of the stated goals of this game were. Because, it's not actually being broadcast. Nobody knows what's going on inside HQ. He kind of gets on the radio and communicates with his staff that the leaders of the Future Foundation are in danger, but as long as he's around, the Future Foundation will not be defeated. Somehow this seems less psycho-egotistical and more strongly determined than when Kyosuke says the same kind of shit. I don't know if it's just because, in general, Byakuya is like a more likable and less fucking insane character, but it's just like, these are almost the same kinds of things that Kyosuke says, but like when Byakuya says it, it's just like, yeah, no, that tracks. Like, I'm good with Byakuya saying it. Kyosuke can fuck off. Meanwhile,
I think
go ahead.
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead. I was just gonna move on, but
A long way towards that is the fact that Kyosuke has never had a moment of, like, empathy or anything. We've never gotten a moment where he gets knocked off the pedestal, whereas Byakuya, we've had a few times where he's been humbled by what he's done and has learned a lesson from it. That's mostly what his arc was in the first Danganronpa. So by the time he gets to this level of confidence in himself, he's learned his lesson and he's learned to have some kind of empathy for other people.
yeah, I could definitely see that. Like, it's here's the thing though. Like, to put it in that way, like, I mean, and that obviously that argument could then be made. We had a whole game for Byakuya to have his character development and have his arc, and we've only had what's been in this series so far for Kyosuke. I don't think Kyosuke would ever undergo that character arc, though, is my big thing. And if that is where they're going with the Kyosuke character through this anime, he has absolutely not fucking earned it.
Yeah. I will say this line here reminds me a bit of the imposter Byakuya in Danganronpa 2.
Yeah. Imposter Byakuya was very much trying to, like, be very, like, motivational to his fellow classmates, and just being like, listen, like, it's fine, like, I'll take charge, I'll be, I'll make sure we're all taken care of and all safe and all that, right before he fucking died. But
yeah, and it basically, it makes me wonder if there was a bit of this in Byakuya before, or like during his development through Hope's Peak, that the imposter would have seen. Oh wait, no, that was the following class. Never mind then.
It is worth noting that the imposter was at the very least aware of Byakuya prior to Byakuya being a student at Hope's Peak, because when the imposter first encountered Mitarai, the imposter was pretending to be Byakuya at that time.
Yeah, now I was wondering more if this attitude is something that developed at Hope's Peak for Byakuya, but because they lost their memories, that was something that was undone. But that wouldn't work because the same thing was done for the alternate affairs.
Yeah, the Neo World program. That being said,
so
I think what this more says, honestly, is that this kind of personality has actually always been a part of Byakuya, but like what we see of him in Danganronpa 1 and the way he acted probably through his first year at Hope's Peak, he tried to be more standoffish and more like, these people are beneath me, even if that wasn't how he really felt.
Oh, fair enough.
I think that's actually more of an indication. Meanwhile, back at Monika's extremely subtle headquarters, Kamaru and Toku bust their way in with a little help from Genocide Jack, massacring Monokumas.
Be anyone's headquarters.
While Monika kind of watches on through security feeds, still baffled at why they would do this for something as worthless as hope and friendship. She's determined that because the world thinks that, she as Monika is worthless, she basically only really has two choices. She can either abandon the world or she can destroy it, and her mind's already made up. If the world's going to think that I'm worthless, then I'm going to destroy this world and remake it into one where, I have worth, and I don't give a fuck about anything else. As they make their way into, a major room, the hallway is actually lined with a bunch of the giant robots used by the Warriors of Hope in Ultra Despair Girls. And they get surrounded by, a bunch of those and a bunch of Monokumas, and it looking like Monika is about to, launch some sort of large-scale operation of some sort.
But then...
first, Monika goes on this whole thing about declaring that she'll, bring the super high school level Hope, Makoto Naegi, to no despair, and that she's become even more Junko Enoshima than Junko was. They're all, Kamaru and Toko are basically surrounded by all these robots that are closing in menacingly. Then Monika immediately surrenders.
Yep.
She basically kind of explains she figures even if she fights, she's gonna lose, because somebody's hope always wins, even if she's not sure whose hope it would be. Then she blows up her robots and a significant portion of her tower. Climbing out of the rubble, Kamaru and Toko find that Monika has basically been living like a NEET, her private room, which is actually just like a van. It's the back of a van. It's filled with trash and shelves full of manga and video games. Monika has, at this point, given up on the whole hope and despair thing, and essentially thinks it's, super embarrassing to even bring it up. She's like, she's moved past that. It's not really her thing anymore. She tells them that she's not the one behind the killing game at Future Foundation HQ. Well, sorry for the spoiler, 4 episodes early, I guess. Fucking whatever, man. And she's really just there to watch it go down because she wanted to see Naegi in action. She's never actually directly interacted with Makoto Naegi before, and just kind of wanted to know, listen, this guy very clearly is inspirational to a lot of people, and a lot of people seem to really pin their hopes on him. I kind of want to know what he's like, if that's going to be the case. She admits that she's the one who faked Asahina's death, using, ketchup as blood and all that, thinking it would be funny, but it didn't even actually amuse her, so she didn't really try and push it too far. And she admits she did kill the real Gekko Gahara, but she doesn't really think it's that big a deal. All things considered, she's killed a lot of people in her past, so it's really not a big deal to her to kill one more. It's not even a thing. Through discussion, they talk a little bit back and forth, and Toko and Kamaru are basically how did you get to this point? And Monika says that, quote-unquote, that person turned her into an adult. If she kept on focusing on hope and despair, she'd end up like him, and let's be real, nobody wants to be Nagito.
The one decent thing he does is make someone else realize this is stupid.
I'm not disagreeing that that is probably the best thing he did, but all told, I think what we're gonna see in, the episode, one of the Despair episodes we have here, and a couple of the upcoming Despair episodes, Nagito is a lot more complex than the interactions we had with him between Ultra Despair Girls and Danganronpa 2. He has a very complicated philosophy about hope. I guess is the best way to put it. And we see little hints of that, and they might develop it more in the following episodes, but we'll talk about that when we get there. Monica basically tells Komaru and Toko that she doesn't know who's actually running the killing game. She has no idea. She was just there to observe, like she said. But she does know that for absolute certain that because of Naegi, one of the survivors of the killing school life at Hope's Peak Academy is going to die. She knows exactly who it is, too, but outright admits she's too lazy to tell them. She just doesn't want to bother.
She's gone full neat.
Yes. Even being threatened by Genocide Jack doesn't convince her to tell. She instead decides she must go to the one place not corrupted by hope or despair. Spice!
Nice!
Bunch of Monokumas
yeah, 4
grab her.
Monokuma robots grab the van, turn into jet boosters, and just fly that van up into the atmosphere. It is the most surreal fucking thing to watch.
It's pretty fucking funny. Komaru and Toko, basically Toko tries to stop her and be like, no, wait, you gotta fucking tell us, you're not letting you get away. Grabs onto the van. Komaru grabs onto the van to try and stop Toko, and eventually Komaru manages to convince Toko that it's not worth it. They drop from high in the air, and Komaru uses link bullets to control a bunch of Monokumas to turn a big rug into a fireman's trampoline, thus saving them from their fall. I guess.
I mean, that's how that works, right?
Don't think about it too hard.
She's close to Toko, who herself follows cartoon physics, so yeah, it's probably fine.
There is a bit of a touching moment where we see that Toko and Komaru really are friends, despite them usually being pretty antagonistic towards each other. And that about wraps up our adventures in Towa City. They have a little bit of a talk about, hopefully someday, Monica will get past her whole, not caring about anything and, come back from space and sort of rejoin humanity. But, that's sort of up to her. Back at Future Foundation HQ, Robo Gahara starts acting weird. And then the Monomi voice calls out to Naegi and calls him Big Brother. Komaru reveals that the Gecko Gahara they're dealing with is a fake, and opens up a video feed. She tells them that one of the survivors of Hope's Peak Academy will die because of Naegi, and that she doesn't think that Monica was lying about this. Toko, meanwhile, is relaying the same information to Byakuya. And our last shot of this episode is a silhouetted Kyosuke stalking the halls like some sort of fucking slasher villain.
It is a pretty cool shot of just him in the shadows, just stumbling around with a sword and the evil mist around him.
Yeah, I think, again, this series has a lot of really great composition work done on it. I legitimately, like I said, I replaced my desktop background on my computer with that shot of Hajime standing on the dock facing down the Future Foundation attack fleet. And this is another one that's really great. I don't think it would work nearly as well if it wasn't a silhouette of Kyosuke. If they tried to give detail to the character, it would not work. And the elongated shadow, the mist, the ominous kind of surreal blue lighting, no, they do a really good job. They make some really cool scenes in this show. I'm actually really impressed by a lot of the art design. But yeah, that's the last thing we see in Future Arc Episode 7, which brings us to Despair Arc Episode 7. We come back into this episode pretty much where we left off, with Junko talking to Mitarai outside the hospital. She asks him about his talent, and when he tells her that he's, an animator, she says she's not into stupid anime. Mitarai takes offense at this, and tells Junko that she won't think badly of anime when she sees his. Back at Mitarai's house, Junko is suitably impressed by Mitarai's anime, so much so that she declares that there is no need for any other anime, and starts smashing up his entire collection with a fucking baseball bat, because Junko. Bukuro is also very impressed by his anime. Mitarai explains, because Junko's kind of curious, why is it so moving? What do you do? And Mitarai essentially explains that his anime directly influences people's brains through a combination of various brainwashing techniques, in order to make an anime that can truly have an impact on people and make the world a better place. Junko lies as easily as she breathes and says she's very interested in making the world a better place too. This cuts into the intro.
Well, that's a half-truth. It's a better place in her opinion, just not for anyone else.
Fair enough.
There is also a distinction that they make in the anime that I think is important for understanding things going forward. When Midori is explaining his anime to Junko, he specifically starts off with saying, like, yeah, I've used every trick in the animation book to, like, you know, grab people's attention and manipulate the viewer. I use color composition, certain colors are chosen to evoke emotions, and then he explicitly says, I've also done things that people could pretty much call brainwashing techniques. So there is some extra
subliminal
stuff.
messaging and etc.
Yeah, subliminal messaging and things like that. So in addition to just making really, really, really good animation that has the same effect on people as, like, you know, the cream puffs did for the confectioner, he's also actively using brainwashing techniques. This is important.
Yeah.
We haven't actually gotten to the mind controlling cream puffs yet. That's next episode.
Huh? No, she didn't. I mean, she didn't necessarily mind control people, but we did see people have an intense reaction to her cream puffs at the practical exams.
Yeah, at the practical exams.
He's not talking about the candies. He's talking about the cream puffs that made them, like, super energized and all that.
That turned them from shadow people into regular animated people.
So you can easily write that one off as being, you know, that's often what happens in quote unquote food animes. I thought you were referencing what happens in the next future episode arc, in which she has mind control candies.
Yeah. So after the intro, we're back at the 77th class, where apparently Gundam has just brought a fucking bear to the classroom. Nobody seems particularly upset about this, and more really just kind of mildly confused.
Yeah, and most like people are just like, why is there a bear? Not get this bear out of here. Just why is there a bear?
Yeah.
I mean, very clearly, it's following Gundam's request. Very clearly under control.
Meanwhile, the discussion turns to Nagito, who at this point nobody has heard from in a year. So they put, like, a lily on his desk, which is like a death remembrance flower. They're like, he's not dead. He just hasn't been to class.
Kyoko puts a lily on his desk.
Yes.
Yeah.
But yeah, like, I wonder what he could possibly be up to. Apparently surviving a plane crash and immediately finding a desert oasis complete with waterfall.
Because Nagito.
Yeah.
Yep.
Back in class, Mikan and the imposter have wandered off somewhere, and the class speculates on, like, what could be going on, since the two of them seem to be pretty close lately. Teru continues to be the worst, and continues to get punished for it. What the imposter is actually up to is just letting Mikan know that Midori has vanished, and he left a note about a week ago, basically saying that he wanted to focus on his work, so don't worry about him, don't go looking for him. And when Mikan goes to his room to check up on him, she finds Mukuro there. We cut out to the fountain, where Chisa finds Sakakura looking pretty pissed off. Apparently more than 20 staff members have disappeared, and somehow he still hasn't been fired as head of security. Like, what's the number of people that need to vanish under your watch before they're like, maybe we should get somebody better to be in charge of our security team?
Considering these people's militant belief in talents, all of them.
Well, yes,
Yeah,
except he
it's
wasn't
not
a super
a
high school level security
guard.
guard. He was a super high school level fucking boxer. If it was boxing matches that stopped happening, that's one thing. I'm sure somewhere in the history of Hope's Peak Academy there was, like, super high school level security guard or some shit like that.
Entirely possible, but considering what these people were up to as a general thing, they're not the best critical thinkers.
Yeah. Sakakura has also been tasked with increasing security around the main course kids, and Chisa and Sakakura think it might have something to do with the Kamakura project. When it comes up about him being worried about it, Chisa kind of remains completely oblivious and, repeating the whole thing about how she would gladly die for Kyosuke, and that, Sakakura had said the same. When Sakakura tells her not to bring personal feelings to work, she asks if he's jealous, and then seems genuinely surprised when he responds that he is. He then plays it off that he was joking, but we know that he wasn't. We also don't really care, because he doesn't deserve to be happy. Fuck Sakakura. We then head over to Mitarai, who is working on his anime under Junko's watch in a facility that she got, quote, directly from one of the trustees, where he won't be bothered by anyone. Mukuro apparently captured Mikan and brought her along. Mitarai is surprised to see her there, but Mikan is just concerned that he's doing alright. He explains that he's been making anime here instead, and seeing their interaction seems to give Junko an idea.
Yeah, this is a grid that actually shows up a few times in the anime every time Junko decides to make a big plan, quote-unquote.
Yeah, I mean, it's something that showed up even in, the games from Junko a few times.
Yeah,
She
but
just has
the
this
anime
big
goes
ol',
specifically out of its way to zoom in on it and show it every time she has her terrible, awful ideas.
Yeah. She decides that to celebrate their reunion, they should watch Mitarai's anime, and Junko super analyzes what's going on. Super high school analysis apparently just involves moving your eyes independent from each other. She then realizes it's late, and she has a very important appointment to keep, so she leaves Mikan behind with Mitarai and heads off to Kamakura's room in order to drag him off on a date. This involves killing some security guards as she takes him to see her, quote, most important thing, which is the school building, where she's gathered the student council. So it is worth noting at this point, all of these characters actually have names and super high school level talents and stuff. None of them are important to any of the media we're actually covering, so I will not at this time be introducing a dozen new characters, most of whom are about to fucking die.
Also, one of them we met before. He was the background character you brought up last time.
Don't think so, actually.
Well, if he's not, they use the exact same character design.
It's a very similar character model, but I'm pretty sure the super high school level spy was not a member of the student council. If anything, he can't possibly be. He's literally involved in the events between Despair Arc and Danganronpa 1.
Ah.
Yeah. It's a very similar character design. I know which character you're talking about. It is not the same character.
Okay.
But yeah, they apparently used some sort of blackmail or threats to get the student council to come there, and Mukuro tells them that they will now have to kill each other. They are, of course, defiant against this ridiculous idea, so Mukuro decides to get things started. Basically, she tells them either they're going to kill each other, or she's going to kill them, one way or another. Junko wheels in trunks full of the kind of motives we saw in Danganronpa 1 in order to motivate the rest, as well as a bunch of weapons for them to use. The Student Council, one of the members of the Student Council tries to keep things reasonable, but it's obvious that somebody's going to crack. Junko hands Mukuro a piece of music to sing while the killing game gets underway. Hunter had a whole thing of notes about this song, so go ahead and take that away.
All right, this song is called Tsubasa o Kudasai, means please give me wing. It is actually a popular folk song that was originally produced for what is called the Nemu Popular Festival for the year of 70. It took place in Shima Mie Award 1970. It has been covered by a wide variety of artists then, and actually might be familiar to a number of anime fans who have either heard it through Megumi Hayashibara's cover for the second Eva Rebuild movie, or as the second end credits for Nichijou, as performed by Sayaka Sasaki.
It is also one of the songs that the band and K-On! Covered.
Yes, I wasn't sure if that was in the anime or just on one of the music for when I saw the notes for that.
I'm pretty sure it was in the anime. At the very least, I know it's one of the primary songs in one of the K-On! Games.
Ah.
But yeah, so it's a pretty well-known folk song. Lyrically, it doesn't really have actually a whole lot to do with any of this shit. So I don't know why they chose this particular song, other than I guess it being like a well recognizable song in Japan. Anyways, one of the student council members grabs a gun and decides he's going to kill Junko and Mukuro. There's a struggle for the gun when one of the other ones is like, don't be ridiculous, like we shouldn't kill anybody. And he falls backwards directly onto a sword being carried by another student council member who has gone crazy due to the blackmail secrets motive. And thus the chaos begins. Knives, guns, frying pans, all manner of weaponry get used. Meanwhile, Mukuro sings on and Kamakura watches silently. I've got to be honest about this sequence of scenes. I've watched a lot of fairly violent anime in my time. I've watched Fist of the North Star, JoJo's, a lot of like 80s hyper-violent anime, all that kind of stuff. Something about the killings honestly just felt a lot more brutal and disturbing than I'm used to. I think part of it maybe is that for the most part in Danganronpa, we've gotten used to violence either happening off-screen and we just see the aftermath, or when we do see violence directly, it's so absurd that it's impossible to take it seriously. But, like, watching a girl scream in pain as a spear is pounded into her with a shovel through the corpse of her boyfriend, it hits differently. It's kind of fucked up.
Yeah. So
Even
I actually
with the
have
pink blood here.
Yeah, I have a few thoughts about the whole killing game scene in this episode. So forgive me if I go on a bit of a
Go for it.
bit of a rant about it.
What we're here for.
So first off, it takes approximately 40 seconds of episode time to go from maybe we should talk about this to murder. And in that time, only one, like the flat out like hyper murder that starts occurring. And in that time, only one person touches the blackmail. And so it feels very much like it descends like almost instantly in the snap of the fingers from Danganronpa to some real effed up Lord of the Flies shit. And that led me to the thought that I have about the whole horrible, awful event. Because this is the horrible, awful event that gets referenced. The most tragic
This is not.
event in Hope's
No,
history.
no, it isn't. This is
Hope's Peak history.
Yes, this is the tragedy of Hope's Peak Academy. This is not
Yes,
this is not
this
the
isn't
tragedy.
the terrible, horrible, no good, very bad day, but this is the tragedy of Hope's Peak Academy that kicks off everything else.
Sort of. It is worth noting this is one element of the tragedy of Hope's Peak Academy. The tragedy of Hope's Peak Academy is actually something that is actually basically what the rest of Despair arc is going to be.
Yeah, they
I
did
will say
cover
they
that
go
before.
from what one person looked at the blackmail to everyone murders everyone else very quickly.
Yeah.
And with little provocation. But
It is worth noting that officially what is referred to as the tragedy of Hope's Peak Academy includes this killing game, the parade, because we'll get to the parade in a little bit, but the parade doesn't end well, as I'm sure you can probably imagine. But the parade is part of the tragedy of Hope's Peak Academy, and a couple other events that are going to take place at the tail end of Despair arc are considered part of the tragedy of Hope's Peak Academy. This is just one of multiple inciting incidents of said tragedy.
I was going to say, if I remember correctly, we are informed of either the end of the parade or one of the other events in Danganronpa 2.
Yes.
We were informed of the fate of the reserve course.
But yeah, that leads into the thought that I had, regardless of whether this is the instigating event or it's just one element of it. The entire series as a whole has been dancing around exactly what happened. We get something bad happened at Hope's Peak Academy, and then that leads to the most despair day of all time. And it almost works better when you don't know what the despair is, because they're asking you to do a lot of lifting from a world-building standpoint of what could be so bad that it turns the entire world into Mad Max hellhole until the Future Foundation comes and tries to restore order. But if it's kept vague enough, you can still get away with it.
Yeah.
So
It's kind of one of my inherent issues with prequels, as this is kind of a series that's better served with the vagueness than actually knowing every little detail of things.
Well, okay, there are a few things to consider here. One element of the world building of Danganronpa that you essentially just have to take on faith for the entire premise of Danganronpa to work is Hope's Peak Academy is considered the hope of the entire world. Like, the future of the world, and this is just a thing that people in the world really do focus on, is like the future leaders and movers and shakers and like the future of humanity's development is tied to the students of Hope's Peak Academy, and that's just a thing in this world. So stuff like this happening at Hope's Peak would be much more impactful in this world where that is the case than, say, if there were some school like this in our world that, fine, like they want to say like, oh yeah, we're teaching tomorrow's leaders and thinkers, and everyone's kind of like yeah and fucking makes the masturbatory motion. Like, that's not what it's like in this world. In this world, like you saw, it's a huge fucking media event when they have the practical exams at Hope's Peak, because everyone wants to see like, oh, what are the hopes of the world going to be up to. And the other thing that's worth considering is, again, this killing game in the student council is the first part of the tragedy of Hope's Peak Academy. It's the least bad event that takes place as part of it.
Yeah, like there's still 4 episodes left, so if you're assuming this is all that's going to happen, I'm certain it's not.
All that said, we'll just leave it for future episodes for any more discussion on it, I'd say.
Yep.
Yeah.
fair enough.
Also, there's a chainsaw that says Jason Freddy on it, which is just confusing as hell.
Yep. Especially since I don't think either of them have ever used a chainsaw.
I want to
There's
say
a lot of material to reference.
I'm pretty sure Jason has at least once.
Also, as another aside, chainsaws continue to be better weapons in fiction than in real life.
Oh yeah,
Oh, yes.
no, they're not actually that great at fucking people up. Like, they'll fucking
No.
lacerate the shit out of you, but they're not gonna without some serious effort, they're not actually gonna dismember a body.
Especially a living one.
Yeah. In the end, there is a single member of the student council left who has apparently calmly killed quite a few of his fellow students with a handgun, but he seems to have just completely broken from this. Izaru Kamakura approaches, and the council member tries to kill him. This ends predictably. He literally bounces off that window and lands directly on the still running
Face first
chainsaw.
on a chainsaw.
Yeah. With the last of his life, he fires a shot at Kamakura, which grazes Kamakura's cheek. In the control room, Junko declares that they will do something even better to make sure that Kamakura gets excited, next time. This is just the beginning.
Oh yeah, you gotta start small.
As we go to credits, Chisa receives a phone call in the middle of the night from a 1,000-year-old wizard who used magic to turn himself, quote-unquote, young and handsome again, but has no idea what handsome actually means anymore and also can't dress himself properly. Kizakura is letting her know about what's happened to the student council, and it seems the plan the board of trustees has decided to go with is to sweep the whole thing under the rug as if it never happened. Jin is furious about this, but Tengon explains to him that covering it up is the only way for Hope's Peak to survive, since, they already have such a huge amount of scrutiny from the world and everybody pays attention to them. And they're already trying to cover up the human experimentation they did. So it's just kind of like, we don't need more
And
attention
the
brought
death
to
that
us.
happened,
Yeah.
some amount of time prior.
At least 6 months. Because we know 6 months passed between the whole death thing and then Chisa, and then the practical exams, and then Chisa got sent to the reserve course. We know she spent 6 months teaching the reserve course before coming back, and it's probably presumably been maybe a week or two. Actually, no, we know exactly. We know it's been 1 year since the practical exams, because they explicitly say that it's been a year since anyone's heard from Nagito.
Yep.
Ah, yeah.
Yeah.
Or specifically since he was expelled.
Well, he wasn't expelled.
He wasn't
He was
expelled.
he's
Or
suspended.
not expelled, suspended. Sorry.
No, Ruruka, Izayoi, and Kimura got expelled. It was
Yes.
only Nagito, because Nagito did not actually directly have anything to do with the events that took place, but they know he fucking was responsible for them. Only got suspended.
Yes. Yeah, because he did not have a direct hand, he got suspended, even though his powers basically the thing that caused all of it to happen.
Jin, Kirigiri asks Kizukura that if anything happens to him, to have Kizukura look after Kyoko. I'm sure this won't be relevant at all.
To be fair, I love the quote that happens here.
Yep.
Yeah, Kizukura is basically like, oh yeah, no, if you die, I'll be sure to marry her. And it's like,
Well, I guess I'll have to live forever then.
yeah.
Yep.
It is worth noting, and this is something that does kind of flash back to it. When we get to the next episode, it'll flash back to it. Earlier on in the future arc, while Kizukura was bugging Kyoko in the hallways, he mentioned that he had a friend that hates detectives. He was actually talking about Jin. There's a whole thing. I think it touched even a little on it in Danganronpa 1. There was basically this whole thing where Jin was actually sort of a disgrace to his family line because he comes from a long line of famous detectives and basically got disowned by his father for taking on a job as a headmaster of a school. And Kyoko ended up mostly raised by her grandfather, which is why she became a great detective. Even though, like, Jin is actually her direct father, and, like, nothing, he wasn't dead or anything at the time. He was off, he basically got disowned from the family. And that's part of the whole thing of why Jin hates detectives, is because, like, he's sick of it from his family line. And the final set of scenes we get are done in the manga panel reveal style from the games. Where this particular set of scenes is Junko sending out messages, letting the entire reserve course students know about the Kamakura project, which is what, all the money from their tuition is going towards, the mass murder of the student council, and most importantly, because the way the video of the student council is edited, all of the guilt and blame for the whole student council killing game ends up resting on Kamakura. In order to bend the narrative to it being the result of the school's human experimentation regarding Hope that resulted in the deaths of 13 of the best and brightest of Hope's Peak. She declares, "Now the parade begins," and we're sent to a scene of the reserve course students rioting at the gates of the main course building.
It's a parade, thank you very much.
I mean, they can call it a parade. It's a riot.
I mean, technically speaking, we don't know that it's called a parade until next episode because apparently Hope's Peak calls riots parades.
She explicitly says now the parade begins. Actually, she calls it a parade.
She says now the parade begins, which can easily be like a reference to like, oh, she's causing mischief and that kind of stuff. It's not until like the start of the next episode where they specifically mention that the school calls riots parades.
Well,
because they don't have riots.
Well, I don't know this one.
I don't necessarily know this is a thing that happens terribly often at Hope's Peak, so that they have like a standing fucking policy. I'm pretty sure
we
that
don't know how much Hope's Peak is under the rug.
Considering all the nonsense that usually happens at Hope's Peak, them having a code word for riots wouldn't actually surprise me.
Except for the part where like the reserve course has actually only existed for like a couple years at this point.
It doesn't mean the regular students haven't rioted.
I'm pretty sure if the regular students riot, the school no longer exists.
Also, even though the reserve course has only existed for a couple years, that doesn't preclude there being other riots on campus just because.
From who?
The ultimate high school level rioter?
Oh, rioter, obviously.
No, they have staging grounds. Anyways.
Yeah, so that then brings us into Future Arc Episode 8. This episode begins with another flashback to, quote, several years earlier, where the star of Saving Private Ryan, if it was made by a film student who really liked Tim Burton movies, is currently engaged in assaulting Hope's Peak Academy, along with another teacher. They discuss being teachers, and that they enjoyed being teachers, then get completely railed by a humongous cannon which obliterates the other teacher. Like, fucking literally all that's left of her is a crater, bloodstains, and a helmet. Unfortunately, that cannon should have aimed a bit more to the left.
Look, all I'm saying is sometimes death flags are way too fucking obvious. They just seem to attract explosive rounds.
coming back from the intro, things continue to be going well for Yasuhiro. This time, though, that's actually true, as the attack helicopter chasing him gets taken out by somebody firing a fucking rocket launcher from the back of Byakuya's helicopter. Byakuya and his team have now arrived at Future Foundation headquarters. Inside, we return to the conversation between Naegi and Kamaru, reiterating what we learned last episode. Somebody who survived Hope's Peak Academy will die because of Naegi. It's worth noting, as far as I recall, that this is actually the first time Naegi and Kamaru have had a chance to actually talk to each other directly since the tragedy. The only other contact they've really had, as far as I can recall, was a recorded message from Kamaru that Byakuya delivered to Naegi at the end of Ultra Despair Girls.
I thought they talked once, like,
They did.
somewhere. Yeah, they talked once during Ultra Despair Girls.
When
Like-
they first got the communication tower working above.
That's right. They
jamming.
ended up in touch
Yeah.
with Makoto. For some reason, I thought they ended up in touch with Byakuya when that happened, but
No,
regardless,
it was just a
it's-
really bad connection.
it's really nice to see Naegi both caring about, but also trusting in his sister to be able to take care of herself. It's a nice little character moment for him. As they're wrapping up, the signal breaks up before Naegi can promise Kamaru that he'll come for her once this is all over. With the signal being lost, the Gekogahara robot starts to shift into an automatic operation mode. Since they have no idea what the fuck it's going to do in that mode, Asahina and Naegi wisely decide to get the fuck out. They head out into the hallway and immediately run into Kyosuke, who is looking perfectly stable and not at all in an unhealthy state of mind. That just...
Perfectly stable.
Yeah.
Pinpoint glowing eye is perfectly normal.
Well, that's because of the drugs.
The good stuff.
Kyosuke draws the bizarre cyber katana thing he has, but before he can attack Naegi, Robogahara comes crashing through the wall. Kyosuke chops off her head, but it doesn't really accomplish much since she's a robot. She switches to Berserker mode, which apparently is just converting the wheelchair into a straight-up power suit. I tried to get screenshots of this, but the particular animation in this scene is so fucking blur-heavy that there's not a single clean frame in the whole goddamn thing I could get. It was at this point, however, that I did have a weird thought occur to me. Y'all think that the real Gekogahara's wheelchair had all of this stuff, like tasers and missiles and power suit mode? Obviously the Berserker mode thing is the robot thing, but, I honestly do wonder how much of the violent options are Monika's additions, and how much of it is just stuff the real Gekogahara also had.
I don't
Girl's
think,
gotta defend herself.
I don't think she had it because she was. That wasn't what her specialty was.
Regardless of that, they were kind of fighting the remnants of despair kind of constantly, so
Yeah,
you'd still have to have self-defense options.
yeah, I'm sure she had some degree of weaponry or violent options, but...
She was the ultimate therapist, so that doesn't really fall in line with her. But that is also a point. She was fighting the ultimate despair, so maybe.
Fucking Kyosuke was the ultimate super high school level school council fucking president. Why is he a katana master?
That's incredibly important to be a school council president in Japan.
I was gonna say.
No, it isn't. It's important to be the disciplinary committee chairman.
No, well, fair enough.
Yeah,
I was gonna say, Taka
that one
didn't have
depends on
one,
the
so
school.
someone had it.
Sometimes you just have to be good at children's card games.
That's true.
Yeah, so Kyosuke and Gekogahara sort of face off against each other. Asahina and Naegi basically go well, we should get the fuck out of here, and take off down the hallway in piggyback fashion. It's also revealed that Kyosuke's katana is a heat blade of some sort.
Yes, it is.
Because reasons.
Because
Come on,
for
that
some
wasn't his
reason...
sword. That's the one he took off the.
Well,
he
it's
took
the
out,
sword he
the wall
has
stuff.
now. It's
Yeah.
Who else's sword is it? It's fucking his now. He's got it.
Fair
Yes,
enough.
this is the other one he took, because he left his previous folding sword inside of his girlfriend.
My.
Heat blades don't fucking work.
Well, yes, but that aside.
I know everyone loves the fucking 10,000 degree hot knife YouTube channel and shit like that. That shit works totally fine for cutting through regular objects and food and shit like that. If you heat up a blade to any degree where it's going to make a difference to the things it is cutting, it is going to lose its edge fucking immediately.
Yep.
This is a terrible idea to do to a katana.
I would say a super hot blade will cut through like ballistic gel really easily. But not an actual person's flesh. We don't melt like ballistic gel does.
Especially not metal.
So, hypothetically, if it had a really high melting point, it won't lose the edge anywhere near as quickly. So if they're using magic super science metal or something.
Yeah, like that's the thing. There is no
even
metal that
accounting for
holds a
that-
decent edge that can be that has that high a melting point.
No, but yeah, even throwing that part aside, yeah, you're just not gaining much for this.
Yeah, it's one of those things I always find kind of fucking ludicrous. Like, even as far back as Gundam and all the Zaku's having heat axes, it's like that doesn't fucking work. That doesn't do anything.
Even with Gundam, where you can actually literally have to hand wave for magical metal. Yeah, it's just like this isn't going to benefit that much. Also, what you're hitting also is made of similar metal that's going to have the same heat absorbing properties, so this is kind of self-defeating.
Pretty much. Anyways, back over in the Monokuma lounge, Kyoko, Kizukura, and Miturai are still discussing the identity of the attacker. While Kyoko investigates bookshelves, Kizukura is disarming traps Izuyoi had set around the room. Ruroka again encourages them to leave, but Kyoko insists that she needs to finish checking the room. She notices some drag marks at one of the bookshelves, but just as she's about to investigate further, Ruroka conveniently clutches into a pile of crossbows and grenades, which were apparently part of the traps that Izuyoi set.
Yeah, because in addition to being the high school level blacksmith, he's also a trap master.
Apparently.
It's a sub-discipline.
Like you do.
Yeah. Well, they didn't want to name someone the ultimate high school level trap master because that just sounded stupid, so they just went with blacksmith.
To be fair, he does forge a lot of blades.
Also, I'm almost certain that in one of the side stories there is a super high school level ambusher. So, it would kind of be the same thing there. Yeah, so Kizukura pretty much immediately calls her on it, just being like, I would have sworn you're intentionally trying to interfere with the investigation. I do talk a lot of shit about him, mostly because he looks like a scarecrow accidentally brought to life but not given a soul, but Kizukura is actually remarkably astute.
Yeah.
His names get better and better.
He reveals that Ruroka actually has a number of younger Future Foundation members who are loyal to her, and, says, he, quote-unquote, heard that she intended to split off and create her own organization separate from the Future Foundation. He then proceeds to call out somebody on the other side of the door for their opinion on it, which it turns out is Sakakura. Sakakura is here to kill them all because they might possibly interfere with Kyosuke's plans. His very strong, well-thought-out plans that these people might somehow mess up in some way. I don't fucking know, man. I just don't.
I think at this point the logic is even collapsing in his own head. So, yeah.
Meanwhile, back outside, Byakuya's forces have started setting up explosives to try and blow clear one of the entrances to the headquarters. Yasuhiro was set to work helping them. That's the whole scene. That's it. They felt that was important.
He complains. I mean,
He usually complains.
Yeah, he complains. Byakuya ignores it because...
Byakuya doesn't do any work. I mean,
Well, yeah.
everything you expect to occur occurs.
Yeah. These characters are exactly these characters.
Back in the Monokuma lounge, Sakakura has been smacking around the others somehow with nary a chair or pipe in sight. As he moves to take out Kyoko, Kizukura hurls a book at him. He says he has to take responsibility since he's the oldest one there, and then proceeds to reason out that Sakakura's NG code is that he can't attack barehanded, which is something we brought up a few times, just given the evidence we had.
My favorite thing about the book toss is even he's like, seriously? You threw a fucking book at me?
Yeah, the look Sakakura gives him is just like, the fuck, dude? Like not even actually angry, just like...
It's entirely like did you honestly just...
It's very much the Austin Powers, like, who throws a shoe? Honestly. in return for this, Kizukuro reveals that his NG code is that he is not allowed to open his left hand. This feels like a pretty minor NG code all told compared to some of the other ones we've seen. Like,
I just think he's lucky he didn't like accidentally open his hand before he knew his NG code and they got this explained to them.
Yep.
Yeah.
I'm guessing it's just like his habit to keep his hand closed.
Maybe. I mean,
I don't think the NG codes are specifically like have to be habits related to the people.
That or they're not turned on until they were informed of them.
I mean, it's entirely possible.
I have an idea of what the fucking Kyosuke's thing is, and it's dumb.
Like I think
I don't think he can use doors.
I think some of the NG codes might be specific to people because, like, for instance, Sakakura ended up with, like, you can't strike people with your bare hands. So some of that stuff might be, but I think a lot of them might, be kind of generic.
But then we have, like
whoever.
left hand running in halls.
Yeah.
There's also
getting hit with a punch or a kick.
There's also the slim possibility that somebody is employing a ultimate luck style thing and is just picking shit at random and it's going to work out in their favor.
Yeah, possibly. There's a lot to parse about this particular NG code all told, because, like, what if his left hand were open when this bracelet were, like, put in place and he just never closed it? Like,
when they woke up and the game first started, what if he just happened to open his hand before they even knew about NG codes?
Yeah.
Again, it's possible the NG codes aren't turned on until after they find out about them.
Yeah, I mean, possible, but, like, even still, the point is like there's a lot, and this is kind of a very bizarre NG code. Honestly, out of all the NG codes, like, some of them feel very, some of them feel, totally fine, totally reasonable, and then there's some of them, like this one, which is just like, yeah, this is totally for narrative convenience for a specific thing that's going to happen in a minute here, and, like, that's it.
100%.
It exists solely for dramatic tension.
It is completely a death flag NG code.
It is a death flag NG code, and I'm not going to argue that it's good writing in any capacity, because it really isn't.
It's also one that's kind of really tough about it, because your natural state, your hand is open, so he has to make sure that he is never not holding his hand in the fist.
So yes and no. Like, my natural state for my hands is actually pretty curled up.
Curled up, but
so
what if you've got it in the fist?
It does actually vary from person to person a little bit on that one.
So here's my thing about this NG code, and how this NG code could actually have been interesting writing. Other than, aside from what it ended up being just a very quick narrative death flag thing.
Yeah.
When they were initially passed out, before, while this killing game was essentially being set up, whoever the traitor was, whoever was setting up this killing game, put some sort of important clue in Kizukura's left hand and closed it around it.
Yep.
That would be interesting.
Yeah.
Even just, like, literally put, like, a piece of paper in there that just outright said, like, the traitor is such and such, or something, some sort of important clue in there. And it's like, so Kizukura would feel that there's something in his left hand, but would have that internal debate of, like, okay, there's something in there, and I'm like, might even, as the killer, like, have Monokuma reveal to him at some point, like, oh yes, the answer to all of this is in your left hand. Like, if you open your left hand, everyone else will make it out, but you'll die because you violated your NG code.
Now that you mention it, and that does give me a tangential thought, Monokuma does not have much of a presence in this series.
No, he pretty much shows up at the very beginning to set up the killing game, and then is done. Like, hasn't really appeared since.
No, we've only had, like, art of him elsewhere.
Yep.
I mean, that tracks with my concept that it's not actually, like, Monokuma or the Despair is actually behind what's going on.
Yeah, I mean, that's definitely a thought to keep in mind. But yeah, like, I think that right there would make this NG code much more narratively interesting and create a lot more character to it.
There was something else that I was thinking of, like, when I saw this NG code that I had to go back and clarify.
Uh-huh.
And I was wrong about it, but my original thought was, wait, what side does he keep his hip flask on? And And unfortunately, no, he's a righty for everything. He keeps his flask in his right pocket.
No, he's not left-handed.
In the design documents, he is seen as drinking from the left hand. So I was like, maybe that's his thing, and he has to keep from like doing the habitual take a drink for the flask thing. But that's not the case.
Yeah.
I think when he pours a drink for Jin in the previous episode, did he pour it with his left hand?
Possibly. I mean, regardless, the point is like it's still.
I think they were kind of like I think they may have been hinting at it with like the design documents, and I think he may have like handed over the drink the left hand in the other episode when he hands over a drink. So they may have been like hinting at something to do with his left hand, but it also really doesn't matter because they just outright tell you here. And then spoiler, if you haven't figured out, he's going to die in 5 seconds.
Yeah.
We're like one screenshot away from his death scene.
Pretty much. At this point, Kizukura essentially starts taunting Sakakura, trash-talking him and Kyosuke, and, like, talking about, like, man, it must suck for Kyosuke that Chisa died, because now all he's got left is your incompetent ass to support his plans, and, like, basically just really pissing off Sakakura,
quickly becoming a much more likable character.
Yeah. Sakakura, being the dumbass he is, obviously takes the bait and rushes at Kizukura, which triggers Chekhov's pressure trap, which fires a spear from a painting and pins Sakakura to the opposite wall. Earlier on, when Kizukura was disarming traps and stuff like that, he basically told Midori like not to lean on the couch because there were still a bunch of pressure traps around that he hadn't gotten to disarming yet.
We also earlier see him pull out a like marker, but we don't see why.
Yeah, there is like a little like arrow mark on the floor where Sakakura stepped because Kizukura was marking the pressure plates so that he could go around and disarm them as he went. Somehow Izayoi got a full-length fucking spear into a launch rig behind this painting in this wall, which we have, frankly, no indication that there's anything behind.
Izayoi raises a multitude of questions with this room alone. I'm just going to move on. Most notably, how much fucking shit could you possibly have in your trench coat?
Infinite.
A lot.
Haven't you watched anime?
As many as the plot demanded. Yeah.
So now that like the Sakakura threat is dealt with, they start sort of discussing what they're going to do next, and Rurika triggers a pit trap of her own directly under Kyoko. As Kyoko begins to fall, Kizukura breaks his G code to reach out and save her.
Again, there's a pit trap in this room.
Very, very deep one.
Nothing about this room makes sense.
Yep.
No. This room is acting as the plot demands and nothing else.
And specifically, this pit trap got put in by Izayoi, presumably, because the confectioner has the detonator that opens it.
That was what she got from...
That's what she grabbed when she fell in the pile of stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, that being said, I don't necessarily know if Izayoi put this pit trap here or just discovered that this pit trap was here. I feel like if we're trying to be even remotely reasonable about it, he had to have found this pit trap and, like, found the release for it, whereas some of the other traps could easily have been him placing them, but...
I actually think he placed them earlier. Because remember, we have seen the two of them in this room before by themselves. I think that a lot of these traps set up ahead of time to protect those two.
So conceivably, the only thing he did was put explosives in the floor and knew the actual design of the building well enough to know that this is basically just a bottomless pit below this area. That's about the best.
That's what I'm saying. It's like a bunch of the other traps I could imagine Izayoi actually setting up. Like even the full-size spear launching out from behind the fucking wall, as unreasonable as that is. But like this, very clearly. I mean, just based on perspective here, I'm going to say at least 40 or 50 foot deep pit trap. Like, there is absolutely no way they'd have time since the killing game began to, like, dig this, set up the trap doors, cover it up, like, all that.
Yeah.
So this, I feel like, had to have, like, been here before, and they just found it.
Like, the only other excuse I can think of is that he had previously rigged up the entire building before the killing game happened with traps, which would be a possibility. and
I
then just
mean-
had them all turned off until he needed them?
I was gonna say that actually wouldn't be too surprising if they're potentially preparing for an attack from.
Because like he did purposely go to that room to grab the Chekhov's gun that I surely hope shows up again.
Okay, so I can't comment too much about this again because I have some knowledge that of like what goes down in this. That particular argument, while definitely sensible with what we do know, will not hold up over time.
Okay.
More
Yes,
important question: will the Chekhov's gun show back up?
that I don't know.
And by Chekhov's gun, I mean that dumb gun that had 2 knives on it.
That I have no idea. Like I said, I know some very broad strokes things about what's coming, but I don't know a lot of specific details. But yeah, anyways, so yeah, Kizukura manages to hurl Kyoko back up into the room before he, succumbs to the deadly poison of the NG code. A noble end for a mop-headed grease elemental.
I'm gonna miss No Instinct Shaggy.
He got likable in the last episode and then died.
Yep.
Yeah.
That's why he had to die.
Right. As he dies, he basically says like, "Hey, looks like I kept my promise to you, Jin."
Yeah.
Mitarai confronts.
We find.
Go ahead.
Minor note: we do find out that picture that we keep seeing of Jin holding up young Kyoko, it was taken by him.
Yeah, Kizukura was the one with the camera, but I don't think there's any real actual significance to that. Fucking whatever.
It's just a nice little character moment.
Yeah. So Mitarai confronts Ruruka, who basically reveals that she just plans to kill them all. She feeds a candy to Sakakura, which has an addictive effect and kind of hypnotizes him, mind controls him.
For about 15 seconds.
Well, Ruruka orders him to kill Mitarai and Kyoko in order to get more candy, which works perfectly well right up until he yanks the spear out of his shoulder. The pain apparently brings him back to his senses, and now Sakakura plans to kill all 3 of them. So, great job there, Ruruka.
Yeah.
But
I mean, his plan was to kill all 3 of them anyways, so...
Yeah, but before he, got explicit orders to, hey, I need you to kill these 2, he was seemed pretty content to just be pinned to the wall by this spear.
That's true.
But before he can get on with it, Kyoko has a parlor scene to do. Turns out that Ruruka is the one who killed Izuyoi, and that's why she's been acting weird. Sakakura says it doesn't matter because he's just going to kill them all, but Kyoko posits that solving this mystery is the only path to actually escaping the killing game. Izuyoi actually died from his NG code, but then it was staged to look as if the attacker had killed him. The knife in his chest was actually taken out of Kimura's body. All the other victims of the attacker were killed by a single stab directly to the heart, but the knife wasn't actually lodged in Izuyoi's heart, and he also hadn't lost any blood from the stab. He was dead before he got stabbed. Izuyoi's NG code, as it turns out, was eating food, which is why he had been refusing Ruruka's sweets the whole time. We see a little cutbacks to little things about, Kyoko noticing things and finding, powder on him and stuff. She also reveals that she tasted his saliva and it was sweet. Mitarai has the proper reaction to this of being incredibly fucking grossed out by Kyoko.
Saliva? Yes.
Of a corpse. Yeah.
Yeah.
But
normal thing in the world.
Sakakura and Ruruka don't seem to care that much about it. And the motive for killing was the secret door, which Izuyoi had previously discovered. Ruruka at this point points out that, just because Izuyoi had found a secret door that would let them out, that's no reason for her to kill him, which Kyoko agrees with.
Unless there's a reason for you to do something illogical.
Yep, except for the fact that Ruruka's NG code is somebody leaving the playing field. Basically, if anybody actually gets out before the game is over, Ruruka dies. Sakakura immediately is like, well, fuck, I don't need to kill you guys if I can get out of here, and basically rushes to the door and starts trying to pry it open. Ruruka immediately tries to stop him, because she'll die if he leaves. But Kyoko seems to already kind of know that nothing will come of it. She leaves the room, and Mitarai is like, well, what about the entrance? Should we, shouldn't we try and get out of here? And she basically just kind of shakes her head and keeps walking.
I'd also like to note this is the first non-asshole action Sakakura has ever committed in this series.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah, he's like, I'm just done with this shit. If we can leave, let's
Yeah.
leave.
As they rush away from the room, Mitarai asks Kyoko, like, why did Kizukura, save you at the cost of his own life? Kyoko says she doesn't really know, but
She has a
doesn't really-
hunch.
she has a hunch, but it doesn't really matter. Mitarai declares her to be cold, and she responds that she is, because I am a detective. Post-credits, Byakuya's team outside of Future Foundation headquarters sets off their explosives, and Yasuhiro tries to rush in immediately. Byakuya stops him and basically tells him, no, you wait out here, because Yasuhiro apparently just isn't allowed in this building ever. As they enter a lobby, a member of the Future Foundation checks what appears to be a collapsed person at the reception desk, but it's actually like a robot of some sort, sets off alarms. In the hallway, Naegi and Asahina are running through, a great rumbling starts, and then Future Foundation headquarters collapses.
No, the giant penis.
No longer erect.
No
Kyosuke,
longer grow large.
it's gone flaccid. Sorry, my notes scrolled further than they should have. So that is the end of Future Arc Episode 8. Brings us into Despair Arc Episode 8, which begins with Mikan telling Junko about how great their class is and how hard Chisa and Chiaki work to make sure they're all having a great time. Junko, meanwhile, is putting together a jigsaw puzzle while Mitarai works on his anime. I know writers who use subtext, and they're all cowards. It is worth noting that the particular puzzle she's putting together is The Last Supper, but with all the people replaced with Monokumas. Which, not gonna lie, I kind of want that jigsaw puzzle. Coming back from the intro, we are shown the actual edited footage of the Student Council's killing game. Like what was actually sent out to all the Reserve Corps students to sort of implicate that it was Kamakura who had done this.
It's a file on the computer that
anime
kids working on.
We don't see that yet. We actually just get shown the footage at this point. We don't have Mitarai discovering it yet.
All right, it's later.
Because after that, it goes back to the Reserve Corps students gathered at the gates of the main course building, screaming and yelling and protesting and all that. Inside, various teachers are discussing the events and say that, the government might even get involved at this rate. Back over with Mitarai, he's worried because Mikan is acting strangely. Looking through his files on the computer, he finds the video of the Student Council killing game and is fairly reasonably upset by it. Him being somebody who, works in animation and stuff like that, can pretty much immediately be like, yeah, no, this isn't CG, this isn't, special effects, this is real, this is real footage, this is really happening. They are really murdering each other. And yeah, pretty much immediately jumps over and vomits into his trash can. Mikan continues to be weird due to Junko's brainwashing and says that what he's seeing there is Junko's project that's still being worked on. When asked why she would make such a thing, Mikan's response to him is muted out. Back in the school, Reserve Corps students start trying to rush over the gates, but Sakakura and the security team hold them back. The 77th class watch on from their classroom. Peiko says that because at their school, which is supposed to be the role model for the whole country, no student would rebel against the system, what is happening out there is, quote-unquote, a parade. That's the official story on the part of the school in order to avoid addressing the issue. Since they're not going to get any resolution about that, the discussion among the class turns to Mikan going missing. They haven't seen her in a while, but say her stuff is still in her dorm room, so it's not like she ran off somewhere, went home or whatever. She just hasn't been coming to class, and no one's really sure what's going on. Chisa arrives and tries to cheer up the class, but does also advise them that, during the day, they should probably stay on school grounds, don't go outside, because, it's dangerous out there right now. Chiaki expresses concern about Hajime potentially being caught up in the protests, and Chisa sort of says, listen, at the moment, I really have no way of knowing what's going on with any Reserve Corps students. I'm kind of, to a certain extent, I'm just as, trapped in here as the rest of you by all of this. Back with Mikan and Mitarai, Mikan starts acting like the brief glimpse of despair Mikan we got to see in Danganronpa 2, but fortunately Junko shows up to maintain propriety. Kicks her in the face across the fucking room for, being horny on main. Mikan loves this because, again, Despair Mikan is fundamentally broken. Talking to Mitarai, Junko goes into lecture mode and starts explaining the plan, the whole plan to Mitarai and why he should be part of it. Essentially, she says that the reason that Mikan ended up this way is because Junko is actually not really good with brainwashing techniques, so the mutual killing video that she made is like a very raw, kind of blunt force effect.
It's her trial run of a brainwashing video.
Yeah, which sort of just, shatters people rather than actually influencing them. She says, however, Go ahead.
Also, as an aside, Mikan was it didn't exactly have everything together in the first place, so...
No, but she was more together than her Despair version.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, Junko basically says, listen, Mitarai, you're much better at incorporating these, brainwashing techniques into videos and, utilizing them in a more subtle, directed way, so you should work together with me so that I can make a video that, can, impact more people, but also do it in a much more controlled way so they don't just end up, completely broken like Mikan is. She's effectively decided that she's going to forcibly conscript Mitarai into helping her, and if he doesn't agree to help her, the 77th class is going to be forced to compete in the next killing game. Back in the classroom, even with all their abilities, the 77th class still can't manage to find out where Mikan is. Fuyuhiko harnessed his family's resources to check in on her house, and nobody could find any sign of her. Gundam sent out his 12 Zodiac generals, but they could find no trace. Just as they're worried about this, a door slides open and a missing classmate arrives. Hooray!
Yay!
It's Nagito. Everyone
dripping wet because apparently he just swam back or something.
It's raining.
No, it's because it's raining outside.
Fair enough.
Like we see that in 3 seconds. It's pouring rain out, but he doesn't have an umbrella. Nobody really cares that he's back. Nobody's particularly excited to see him. But when he's, when they tell him hey, we're more concerned right now about Mikan who's gone missing, he's like, oh, really? Because I just saw her in the West District, on the way to school. And everyone's like, what? And, we gotta go. We gotta find Mikan. And essentially all decide to head out. But before they leave, Nagito calls out to Peko and says that he needs to talk to her about something. I'm sure there's nothing important there. We cut to Chisa coming down the hall, psyching herself up for another day of remaining cheerful in the face of the ongoing difficulties at the school, and comes to find the classroom completely empty. She finds a note from her students saying that they've gone to look for Mikan and rushes off after them, since she already told them it's dangerous for them to travel outside right now with the unrest that's going on. Students continue to swarm over the gates in an attempt to get to the main course building. Sakakura makes a stand to hold them off, and Kyosuke arrives, I'm sure to help to de-escalate things in a reasonable and safe manner. If any Reserve Corps students make it out of this alive, it'll be a fucking miracle. Kyosuke basically says that he, Sakakura, and Chisa need to meet up in order to discuss what's going on and what to do. But because Chisa is out trying to track down her students, she misses the call from Sakakura. The 77th class is split up to search for Mikan, but are having no luck. Chiaki and Nagito, meanwhile, have ended up at a statue in a park somewhere. So it's not immediately evident unless you've paid like close attention to a bunch of stuff across various things we've seen in the series. But this is actually a statue of Izaru Kamakura, the founder of Hope's Peak Academy. We saw a direct photo of him in Danganronpa 2, and he was in the background of some shot, like up on like paintings on the walls in some shots of Danganronpa 1 around the school. Very subtle of the Board of Trustees to put the Izaru Kamakura project in a facility under a statue of Izaru Kamakura. Who the fuck are these people?
Morons, we've kind of been over this.
Probably
I don't know if this is specifically that facility or just another facility.
It is the same facility.
I mean, morons either way.
I don't know if they ever explicitly pointed out, but no, this is the Kamakura project facility. Is under this fucking statue. Nagito, quote unquote, coincidentally happens to find a totally concealed button in the base of the statue, which opens a stairway leading underground. Heading down.
Coincidentally presses a button and steps on a large pressure plate.
Yeah.
So how did no one find this already?
Yeah, nobody cares about the statue of the founder. He's some old dude. Fuck him. Heading down, they find a huge facility, and... Go ahead.
Also, they did. Junko actually found this before.
Well, yes, but Junko found it because she plucked a fucking trustee's eye out and tortured him.
I don't think Junko found this entrance, though. I'm pretty sure there's more than just this entrance.
Probably.
Probably.
Given that Junko enters the room that you're going to get to by going through here from a different way.
Yeah.
That's true enough.
But yeah. So Chiaki is kind of baffled by this whole facility, but it becomes pretty clear from the way Nagito is talking about it that he knows exactly what's going on here. They do eventually find their way to a room and find Mitarai, who Chiaki greets with the dumbest question possible. Like, Chiaki, you saw who you think of as Mitarai like 10 minutes ago. He could not possibly have lost that much weight in this short amount of time and not be dead from massive organ failure. Like, yes, I get it. Part of the whole super high school level imposter thing is that, like, it doesn't like register to people, but like, come on, fucking really.
It's the Danganronpa world. Weird shit happens, especially among the Ultimate.
There are significant limits.
If there was a weight limit pill or a weight loss pill that did this shit.
There are limits to suspension of disbelief.
May I remind you of giant fucking dog after drinking the power-up thing?
Yeah, we'll talk about
it. There's a difference between here's the nonsense our super science gets up to, and what were you laughing at?
That stupid dog thing.
Oh, yeah. But yeah, there's a difference between here's the nonsense our super science gets up to, and people are ridiculously goddamn imperceptive of obvious differences in a person between one moment and the next.
No, I'm more pointing out the fact of we have already established in universe that there is something that ignores the existence of how mass actually work.
Yes,
it is entirely possible, or it's entirely reasonable for her to.
Yeah, and I'm sure Mitarai was, highly prioritizing taking the weight loss pill while the entire class was out looking for Mikan, and then came down here to work on his anime while they were out looking for Mikan. Like, there is no universe in which it is reasonable for Chiaki to be like, oh, it's just Mitarai. There just isn't.
Okay, wait. The problem is we're also dealing with Chiaki, so that almost makes it a little bit more reasonable, if only just. She is kind of an airhead.
Yeah, not that much, honestly.
She's not the only person to comment on his weight loss.
Yeah.
No, she isn't.
In this episode. But,
well, yeah,
I know.
But Chisa is an idiot, so...
Yes.
Yeah. You already have to basically throw out any suspension of disbelief when we're dealing with this series. Not just the anime, everything that's happened throughout Danganronpa. Like, if this is the point you're going to get stuck on, how'd you make it this far?
It's turned into butter.
It's just such a fucking dumbass question. It just really is. Anyways, Mitarai starts freaking out guiltily as Junko comes in. Nagito is entirely nonplussed by this and greets her congenially. Junko is surprised that an outsider knows about this facility, but Nagito assures her that it is pure chance due to his super high school level luck talent. Junko implies that it doesn't matter because they're never going to leave, and Nagito informs her that if she's waiting for Mukuro, she's currently busy elsewhere. The fight between Peiko and Mukuro picks up as Mukuro draws a second knife and goes into a flurry of strikes. Peiko blocks these strikes with her shinai, which shreds apart, revealing that it actually has a real katana underneath it. Both recognize the killer instinct in each other and know that this fight is going to be for real. Back with Nagito, he says that all of the things he's doing are for Hope, and that he will do anything to protect Hope. Junko finds this pretty hilarious, since she's sure nothing can stop Despair. Nagito then reveals his new talent, super high school level having a fucking gun!
He just happened to pick it up.
Yeah, it's a souvenir.
I'd also like to go back to that previous scene, as more specifically, she kind of confirmed that Peko had actually killed someone before.
We know that. Fuyuhiko has literally said that she was a hitman.
Yeah.
Like that's not new information. We know that Peko has killed people.
Yeah.
Like in the conversation they had in the alley
as well.
Yeah, in the conversation they had in the alley, he was like, "You don't have to be a hitman anymore. You can be normal. You can be a normal student now."
Yeah, I was just more thinking of it in context of the Twilight murder thing.
She wasn't involved in the Twilight murder.
She didn't kill anybody during that.
Yeah, she's not involved in Twilight murder case at all, or Twilight murder syndrome at all.
Like, granted, that was the motive for why she killed Mahiro, too. Or why she was involved, or it was part of what led to Mahiro being killed by her. But
where was I?
He has a gun.
Yeah. Chiaki tells Nagito, not to do it, and the killing is wrong no matter what. Nagito tells her she's wrong, and that if you kill to protect Hope, it's fine. That sounds an awful lot like the shitty argument of another shitty character in the series I can think of.
Yes,
the same color hair too.
It's a lot better argument in this particular instance, but yes.
Yeah, I was about to say that. So, Nagito does have a different philosophy than Kyosuke in this instance. He believes that despair is a stepping stone to hope. Essentially, while Kyosuke believes that hope can only live by completely eliminating despair, it seems like Nagito is more of the opinion that despair is just part of the path to getting to hope. Like, you have to experience despair and overcome it in order to actually get to hope. This actually makes a lot more sense in conjunction with the way he acts in Danganronpa 2, once he sort of finds out about everything and comes back to his whole, hope worship thing. It actually, interestingly, provides a lot more context into his thought process there.
Yes, it's like we're in this scene, basically the point where we realize that he really doesn't have any intention of stopping this because he wants despair to happen. Because if despair happens, then an even greater hope will come about.
Well, explicitly what he goes into is that if someone like him is able to kill Junko and stop her here, then she's not good enough to be part of the path to the hope anyways. Yeah. He actually wants her to defeat him so that she can become the ultimate despair that makes everyone's hope shine even brighter when they overcome her. And then Hope shows up and Nagito's gun fails to fire when he pulls the trigger at Izaru.
He also has dumb luck.
Yep. Izaru flash steps around Nagito and tells him that he too is possessed of super high school level luck. Before Nagito can react, Izaru has snatched the gun from Nagito, slipped around behind him, and shot him in the chest. Of course, the bullet hit Nagito's student handbook, so he didn't die from this. He
also has luck.
Yeah, he does, however, pass out, presumably from both shock and impact, because even if something stops the bullet, that still hurts like a motherfucker.
Yep.
Yeah.
Outside, Chisa is still looking around both for her class and for Mikan when Mitarai literally runs into her. He tells Chisa that somebody is going to kill Chiaki and begs Chisa to help. Chisa readily agrees because protecting everybody is a teacher's job. Mitarai tells Chisa where to go, and she runs off to the underground facility. She is determined to save her students no matter what, even if it costs her her own life. The episode fades to black as she descends the stairs. After the credits, we cut to Izaru staring down at Chiaki, who recognizes him as Hajime. And that is how we end Despair Episode 8. So a lot happened in these episodes, actually. There was whereas last time around there was a lot of setup, this was a lot of set off. A lot really did kick off in this episode, and some very interesting things happened here. That being said, as we've come to the end of the specific episodes we're talking about, now is the time we open it up. If anyone has any general theories or general things they want to talk about the series so far, and also if anyone has any further theories about the attacker in future arc, we will go into those as well.
So, the 2 episodes of Despair really confirmed my theory I started having last week, based on the fateful meeting between Junko and Mitarai.
Mm-hmm.
That his anime is not through his own intention, but through Junko's warping, is going to be a significant catalyst to the very, very bad day.
Mm-hmm. Yep, definitely seems that it's kind of guiding that direction.
Though part of what we've seen here, and based on, once again, my process of elimination, further narrows down who I think the attacker is, but we'll get into that when we're actually on the attacker part discussion.
Yep. Does anyone else have anything they want to kind of talk about, theories in general, or just stuff about the series?
My stuff would mostly relate to the attacker and that stuff, so I'll hold off till we get to that point.
Okay, well, go ahead, Vince.
Well, as a more just general kind of review-ish thing, at least stuff is happening now. On the other hand, stuff is happening now. It didn't really dwell too much on it didn't really dwell too much in the spaces that I would kind of hope it would dwell on, because it has a lot of plot to cover in the episodes it has left, so I guess that kind of makes sense. But it's also covering plot that it's like we don't know some of the minor details that I don't really care about, so yeah. But I don't know. It seems exciting, but it also seems like it's going in a very predictable route, so it kind of goes nowhere for me when it comes to the Despair arc. As far as future arc is going at the pace that it always has been, which is, I think, 6 episodes longer than it actually needed to be.
I mean, in fairness, yes, the Despair arc is going in a predictable direction. We literally know what happens at the end of it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like we're getting to see things we've seen referenced before, but we're not really treading in much new ground as far as the main sweeping events that are occurring in Despair arc, with the exception of things like there's a brainwashing video in play now that we didn't know before. But for the most part, we know what's eventually going to end up happening with the main class we're following, Despair arc. So there's a lot of points where it's basically just kind of filling in some minor blanks, but we already know where it's all leading.
Yeah, it's just in general, not being jazzed about prequels in the first place, so...
Yeah, I meanwhile don't have nearly as harsh an opinion there of them, and think Despair Arc is actually doing a really good job of filling in details about things that have been sort of referenced, throughout the games and throughout what we know of the plot already. Because, yes, while some elements of it do work being more vague, it's interesting at least to see some of these things and be like, oh, so that's why things are that way. Just getting those little details to make things make a bit more sense. But yeah, I think if nobody else has anything specific to discuss, then we should go into future arc traitor theories. Shiv, it sounded like you had some things to talk about on that regard.
Yeah, so now that we know there's a brainwashing video in play, I'm pretty sure there's multiple attackers, and that none of them are doing it of their own accord.
Okay.
But my assumption is that given that there's video screens placed throughout the entire building they're in, someone is playing a similar brainwashing, waking up a person and having them get brainwashed on the videos.
Okay. That being said, do you have any theories as to who the someone behind it might be?
I'm actually still thinking it's involved with the headmaster and his change of thoughts.
Okay.
Just because I haven't got anyone else who's really taken that place yet.
Fair
and
enough.
I still think there's a potential that it's the headmaster's change of plans being Almost as if he's, because we know that the initial video that was being made, or the initial animation that the animator was making, was not intended to be a like brainwash murder video.
Mhm.
I wonder if he had plans for a similar brainwashing video, but for Hope, because he realized you can't fight against despair. So he's just going to make a similar brainwashing video to brainwash people into Hope, which is why the animator's there. And additionally, why he still like was surprised the animator was in the building when the whole thing kicked off, because I don't think that was part of his plan.
Okay, fair enough.
And Chisa is probably also potentially still involved as like a member of Ultimate Despair, because I still think there's a decent chance, given everything that's going on in the school, that she's going to end up being in Despair.
Okay. And then Hunter, it sounded like you also had some stuff in regards to future arc attacker theories you wanted to discuss.
Yeah. Once again, I primarily do this by process of elimination. Who cannot possibly be attacker? And this is based on the assumption that if they are dead by the counter, they are actually dead and not the attacker.
Okay.
Based off that, we have, not including Naegi, Kyoko, and Asahina, we have only 4 people left alive. We got Kyosuke, we got Sakakura, we got Ruruka, and we got Mitarai.
Okay.
So I no longer think Sakakura is the killer. Simply because of what we saw in episode 8.
Because as soon as he was like, hey, there's a fucking door out, let's get out of here.
Precisely.
He was like, fuck this shit, let's leave.
Like, yeah, there's a way out that we don't have to do this anymore. Let's fucking end this and just leave. That doesn't seem like the attacker.
Yeah, that's definitely a fair argument to make as to why he would not be the one running the killing game.
Yeah.
Also-
Kyosuke, I still think, is not it whatsoever. Because even though he's homicidal, he is still homicidal on the side of hope, not on the side of despair. And that's, he would not put a thing about killing people off. Even though we know that the video is not being broadcast, I don't see him killing other members of Future Foundation to further the concept of hope.
Okay, fair enough.
So we're down to 2, Ruruka and Mitarai. Ruruka's her NG code about not allowing people to leave the playing field works for her being the killer and also not being the killer, or rather the attacker. It's reason enough to make sure that she keeps the game going and make sure she kills. But that sounds like there's someone outside this who's responsible for it, and I don't think that's the case. Which is why I think it's not her. I think Mitarai is the only person who does not have a reason either way. And I think we're going to find out why he is in the next 4 episodes somehow.
Okay. Definitely some good thoughts there, some good arguments to be made. All right. Did anyone else have anything else they wanted to discuss? Any predictions, any thoughts?
No, my prediction really hasn't changed from Mitarai.
Okay, fair enough.
Again, mostly by process of elimination. If anything, Ruruka is kind of...
Ruruka has become almost as obvious a call as Kyosuke at this point.
Yeah.
From that regard, like, if any of them, if there's a single killer who is left, it was probably Mitarai, just because it doesn't make a lot of sense for anyone else to potentially be if it's not the brainwashing thing, like I think it is. Mitarai is really kind of the only one that makes sense, given like the process of elimination we have left. There would be no reason for like the killer to also kill someone and also stage a fake killing at the same time.
Right.
If they wanted to kill someone off, they could just wait till the next time to go to sleep and kill them.
Yep.
Also,
especially if it's a case of someone who's trusts them implicitly anyways.
Also, considering how the Hope and Despair arcs kind of play off of each other, it does feel like all the focus on Mitarai in the Despair arc is kind of showing what happened to him during that day and why he would be doing a thing he's doing in the future arc.
Yeah,
okay.
He could have actually fallen to despair during the whole events. He is also the only one left who was involved in those events. Everyone else is dead.
See, I'm thinking that potentially he didn't fall to despair like all the other ones, because every instance of the class that we know that fell to despair, he has not actively been there for anything they've done.
I wouldn't necessarily say fall to despair so much as was purposely set up as a sleeper agent.
Yeah.
Yeah, entirely possible.
Yeah, that's why I think more than likely if there's a sleeper agent type person, it's going to be Chisa rather than him.
No, she's dead.
Yes, but it may not have been her plan to die.
Also, when has that stopped anybody in Danganronpa?
Because if it is a brainwashing video
Yeah.
and you happen to fall asleep closest to one of the screens that's going to brainwash you, or be the person who gets woken up and gets brainwashed, it doesn't matter what fucking side you're on. It also explains why they hung TV screens throughout the entire place in every single room and hallway.
I'd also like to go back for a second to something.
Okay.
Monica said she has no idea who the killer is, correct?
Yes.
I think she said she has no
No,
idea
she-
who's behind it.
Yeah, she has no idea who's
Oh, who's
behind the killing
behind.
game. She doesn't necessarily.
Okay,
She doesn't necessarily
that'd
call
be
out
different.
the killer. She just says that she's not the attacker. She calls it that she herself is not the attacker, and she
And she
also
doesn't
says
know
that
who
she's
is.
not behind it. She doesn't know who's behind it, but she does know that Naegi will cause somebody to die. One of the people that survived the killing game.
Yeah, because hypothetically, if there is a singular attacker, Monica would know who that is.
I mean, hypothetically, but
Hekigahara was in the room when Great Gozu was killed.
yeah, but she was
True.
busy pouring ketchup on Asahina.
Sure, she was busy catch up on the scene.
He was, but I still think she would have noticed somebody getting killed.
Yeah, fair enough. Yeah, so it is worth noting on that prediction, on Monica's part about Naegi being there is going to cause somebody to get killed. Ostensibly, we're obviously being led to believe that this means either Asahina or Kyoko. However, it is also entirely possible that it could be Byakuya, Toko, or Yasuhiro.
Yasuhiro, yeah.
Yeah,
I
my
don't-
assumption is that it's Kyoko and it's NG code related.
Yeah, fair enough.
I don't
Yeah.
think it's going to be Toko, specifically because she's not actually at the site.
Yeah, I'm
And-
pretty sure it's not meant to be Toko, because, I'm pretty sure that is the last we actually see of Toa City.
And I'm fairly certain it's not going to be Yasuhiro because we're never that lucky.
True.
All right,
His
well,
death would be the least,
impactful.
oh no!
Yeah. All right, well, with all that being said, I think that's probably a good time for us to go ahead and wrap up this session of Talkin'ronpa, a podcast with slides. So I want to thank you all again for joining us. We'll be back tomorrow with more of our multiplayer playthrough of Tales of Berseria. We will be back on Tuesday with more Prototype, the game surprisingly much longer than they thought it was. And did you guys actually wrap Fate Tactics, or do you think one more session probably?
We have
No,
actively wrapped Fate Tactics.
All right.
Yeah.
Did you have a plan for Thursday, or is it going to be a something night?
We're probably actually taking a break from Thursday for a few weeks due to other stuff that is happening. On
Yeah,
Thursdays.
it could just be a not stream night because it wasn't originally a stream
Yeah,
night. So
Fair enough.
No.
All right. So we'll be back on Tuesday with more. With tomorrow with Tales of Berseria multiplayer. On Tuesday with more Prototype, and right back here again next Saturday for episodes 9 and 10 of future arc and despair arcs of Danganronpa 3. So we hope to see you all then. Until then, I've been Bograt.
I've been the Krampus.
I've been Shiv.
I've been Hunter Green.
All right.
And I'm Vincent.
Alrighty. Have a good one, y'all.
Bye everyone.
Goodbye.